Hey moms, it's Laura Ollinger. Welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. Because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Brenda Perez, life coach and certified elite neuroencoding specialist. That's my next question is, how do you, or maybe what was the change maybe from before till now? How do you make your kids feel loved and heard and like they matter? Like, how do you develop that connection? Especially because I forgot to mention that you have 5 children and many of them are teenagers. And so, ages 6, 8, 16, 19, and 22. So young adult, that's a wide age range. And, typically in the teenage years are when a lot of times disconnection starts to happen because for many reasons, but parents don't know how to connect, because teenagers are wanting to develop their own identity. They're wanting to do risky behaviors. They might start to get in trouble. They, want to be connected more with their friends. And so parents sometimes kind of either give up or they don't have the energy or they don't pursue the children, or maybe they over pursue and they're suffocating them. It could go the other direction. There's always the extremes and the teenager needs more space. So they're kind of still pushing away. So what's your advice for the moms today, whether you have a 6-year-old or a 22-year-old, how do you connect with your kids?
I believe the connection starts within you, within me first. Mm-hmm. Because if I don't understand what is going on with me, mm-hmm. It is hard to understand the other person. Mm. Because you have to be able to step in someone's shoes before you can, you have to step on your own shoes because you don't know what they're going through, right? And a lot of times it's you want to understand. It's not about understanding. It's about loving and hearing what they have to say. Mm-hmm. Like listen, right? Mm-hmm. Take a few minutes and listen, not without judging, without, asking more questions, without trying to figure out what's in their head. Just like, hey, what's going on? What can I do for you? I'm here to support you. And then one thing that definitely made a huge difference is that when the mom, is not having a good day, tell your children. They can feel it. Tell your children, you know what, mommy is not feeling well, and give them the reason. But make sure they don't feel like it's their fault. Tell them, you know what, I understand that you're going through this, and it's not your fault either, right? Make sure that they are not feeling blame. Take off the baggage of them. Because we already carry too much. And imagine in the little mind of a child, their mind is not fully developed, right? Sometimes neither are us. We're in the process of learning. So then just say it. I used to tell my little one, today, right, that I was called from school that she got sick. And then I was like, oh, okay, I was planning on doing other things, but then, okay, that's fine, right? So I told her, I'm going to pick you up. Mommy has to do a few phone calls. And she said, why? For what? And sometimes, in the past, I will say, you know what? Because, you don't understand. And then if I was nervous, I will answer like that, right? Yeah. And depending on how I was feeling, I will answer that way. So now I make sure that pause for a moment and pay attention to what you're going to say. Right? Stop. I will tell my clients, put the brake. If it's the manual brake, put it on, because a lot of times we speak too much. We don't hear, right? So then taking the blame of your children makes a lot of difference. And then explain to them, hey, you know what? I'm crying because I don't have problems. Maybe, you know what? My computer broke down. Maybe my stomach ache. Maybe something. And it doesn't have nothing to do with you. Okay? Mommy is okay. Mommy just needs some time to relax. Because I realized one thing, that you're showing your kids what emotional intelligence is.
Yeah.
Right? They're seeing you. Because you know what? And now she's 8, but back then she was around 6 when I started the whole process. My daughter said, Mommy, when I want a girl so I can help you, And then I started paying attention. What is she seeing?
Mm-hmm.
She said, Mommy, you're always so busy.
Oh.
And then you never take a rest. So I want to grow up so I can help you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow. It took me back when I was a child. I used to see my grandma busy all the time. She has to raise 6 grandkids, and she has 2 grown up children that have some mental, or some disability, and then
Mm-hmm.
another child of her own. And then my grandpa was deaf, so
Oh.
then she had to take care of 10 people by
Wow,
herself.
that's a lot.
And I used to see her crying all the time because her daughter had epilepsy. And then I was like, what do I do? So I grew up like that. So now I get it. We pass those trauma into our children. So heal the mom, heal the dad, heal the relationship so you can bring that healing into your own children. And yes, sometimes in the process, the kids need some help too. So find someone that can work in the meantime that you as a mom or as a dad are getting better, because it will make the process faster than if one person working alone.
Yeah, I think that bringing that idea of generational trauma into the conversation is so important, because a lot of times it's not even necessarily the generation just prior to you, but it can even be from 2 generations, 3 generations prior. That epigenetics, like things actually get passed down genetically into our DNA, through our DNA, and people don't realize, that's another reason that, we can have those strong feelings of depression or anxiety. It's because maybe our grandparent had that. Maybe they were in a traumatic family environment and that got passed down. There was this study that I read about recently that was done on, I can never remember if it's mice or rats, but one of those. And they were, giving them sugar water, and then they would shock them. And so then they would have babies, and it was like 2 or 3 generations down. It was like the grandbabies of the mice, where then every time they smelled the sugar water, they would get stressed. They would measure the cortisol levels in their bodies, even though they were like 2 or 3 generations removed. And it was because it was still genetically programmed into their systems that when they smell, I think it was sugar, but whatever they smelled, it activated that stress hormone in their bodies. And so that's how these things can happen too. It's not always just completely obvious or completely direct. So anyway, back to kind of like what you were saying about, we are modeling behaviors all the time for our kids. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever learned, and through one of my courses, was kind of giving a little bit of a running dialogue of what's going on in your head. So like you said, I had to have some phone calls to make, kind of explaining to them. And so one thing that's really important to do is, how as moms and parents, we're always on our phones, because this and that, and we have little ones, they're kind of confused. Like, why is mom not paying attention to me? Or I was talking, but now mom's looking at my phone, or she's so distracted, right? And so sometimes we do have to look at our phones. I say, put your phone down, but if you have to, it's important to kind of narrate that and say, hey, we are going to that birthday party in an hour. I need to figure out where this is, what the directions are, but kind of whatever the details are, to explain to the child why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that kind of goes with everything. Like you said, if you have a stressful day, it's important to like explain that, like, hey guys, and it's not just for littles, it's for the big ones too. Hey guys, I had a stressful day. My car broke down. I was late to my meeting, and oh my gosh, but that's really modeling the resilience as well, because we're showing that like, that's not the end of the world, right? Like, we had a rough day, something bad happened. It challenged us quite a bit, but we're still able to come back together as a family. We still love each other. Like, we can still get through this, whatever it is. And so kind of like really sharing a lot of that, I think, is important, because like you're saying, when it's more quiet or kept secret, the child wonders. And when they're wondering, they're generally putting negative meaning to whatever is happening, because they don't know what else that is, right? They just see mom crying, or mom stressed, or mom upset. And the way their minds are working is just to assume kind of the worst, like, oh, it's my fault, or, oh my gosh, right? Like they don't have the cognitive skills to be rational and think, oh, well, mom had a bad day because her car broke, right? Like, they can't think that way. Right. And so the more we can share and be vulnerable, but then also show our resilient side too, that's really modeling that for them as well. And so what else can we bring to the audience today? Like when you, have gone through this whole, evolution for yourself just since 2020 with your daughter, what else like have you learned as a mom, as just the leader of your family, and from someone who has really kind of had that generational kind of trauma and baggage and stuff that kind of was bringing them down in the past to the present? It's like you're a different person. I can tell, like, you're a different person from when I met you. And so it's like, what else like goes into this process?
One thing that had helped me a lot is to understand that there's a relationship with yourself, relationship with money, relationship with your body,
Mm,
relationship with, in the spiritual world, God or whoever you believe, right? If
mm,
there's not a good relationship, because what I started figuring out is like there's a gap, right? Like Joseph said, we all know what to do. We just don't know how to do it or how to get there because
mhm.
there's a gap, right? There's a
Yeah.
space in between that's figuring it out, like what's going on in here. It will make a difference in all those areas. And to work at that deeper level, to me, it requires someone that it's skill, that has the knowledge to take you there.
Mm,
Because if you want to do it on your own, you might be able to do it. It's just it will take you longer. That's
mhm,
how I see it. Because
mm,
I will watch YouTube, I will not watch news because news will scare me. I will watch anything that, that will give me that I was looking for. But it's not the same as when you work with someone because that person is just one on one, right?
mm,
Listening.
mhm.
Hey, what else is going on? Because like the coach or the person that is helping you, the mentor or whoever, you find help with, it's seeing what you can't see because we all have that blind spot. We
Yeah.
can't see ourselves, right? So
Mhm.
then whatever area, because one time I heard like you might be doing good in money, but you're not doing good in health, or you might not be doing good in, love. So what is it? Right? And we all can be whole in just one. Like if we understand all that part. It took me
Mhm.
some time. It
Mm,
wasn't just overnight because it is a process, especially if you had to heal a lot of, trauma. That's
mhm.
what I would say. Like figure out, you know, the relationship that you're trying to build, whether with money, whether with someone, love, whether your body, because sometimes we're so mean to our body, right? Oh, I don't like this hair. I don't like this hands. Oh, my lips are ugly or stuff like that. And sometimes we speak out loud and our
Yeah.
kids are hearing and they're repeating.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think my biggest was the money. But now it's like, oh my goodness, I got it. I got that part too. So I understand, right? And
Mm,
and be patient because it is a process. It's not just overnight. Just the main thing is take action. You see something that you don't like, take action because that area is telling you something is wrong. Work it out. That's why it's showing up in your life. And
mm.
right? Isn't that we project
Yeah.
outside what we have inside. So what's inside? And that, to me, honestly, it takes somebody else to help you lead you that way. I do the work and the other person leads me, right? So it's
Mhm.
like we have to partner with somebody if that's
Mhm.
what we're looking for to get us faster. Because, like, Joseph said, further and faster. And yes, that's definitely true.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I like just bringing up that definition of kind of like what coaching even does, because not everybody knows. Like, it's kind of like knowing where you currently are and knowing where you want to go. A lot of times people don't know where they want to go, they know where they don't want to go. So that's kind of like the first thing, first obstacle, first meeting is okay, stop focusing on what you don't want, focus on what you do want. But then, even when they focus on what they do want, they still don't necessarily know how to get there or know what the steps are. So just like what a coach can do is kind of help them break those steps down, help them figuring out what the blind spots are, what the barriers are, the obstacles are, all those things, but then also help hold them accountable because, if we are coming from an identity of something like lack or scarcity or sadness or depression or anxiety, right? It's hard to make those changes without, like you're saying, the relationship with yourself, becoming a new version of yourself, like a new and improved version, like, the Brenda 2.0 or whatever we want to call, and the 3.0, right? Because that's what we're always doing. I know, I love it. That's what we're always doing, right? We have all these iterations of ourselves, and sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, but like having a coach can help, even when you feel yourself wanting to go back to your old ways or your old patterns. It's kind of like, the equivalent I always give is like a person who's kind of going on a diet, right? It's like they, cut out all the sugar and they do all these things. And then they're at a birthday party and they're like, oh, I really want that, right? And it's like, we can take all the ice cream out of the freezer, but that doesn't change the person, right? That doesn't change who that person is on the inside. So just because you remove something doesn't mean that's fixed. So it's like kind of really getting deep. And so what other, thoughts do you have about developing that relationship with yourself and building it into a stronger kind of 2.0 version?
Hold on. I'm sorry, I got distracted because I had my son pick up my daughter from school.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So what was the question again? Because I see it popping up on my.
Yeah, no. And the funny thing is my daughter was too, because it gets through on the VIP when something's happening.
We are moms, okay?
We're having a mom moment. Exactly. I was kind of referencing that, what you said about relationship with yourself. And so, what are some other ways that you've really like built that relationship with yourself in order to kind of what I imagine in your past was some, self-doubt, self-loathing, all those, things that we are procrastination or hesitation or fear of failure, fear of success, all the things that humans have. How did you kind of like build this up into having like a more positive self-image?
I heard this, I believe it was in the Atomic Habits.
Mm.
All habits are built little by little. Good or bad, right? It's just that sometimes we focus more, like you said, on what we don't have. So we constantly are focusing on the negative. Like, what am I doing wrong? Instead of what am I doing right? Right? So the first thing I think is mainly to really sit down and think and write, like right now. Because a lot of times when I'm thinking, I'm just in my head. I'm alone in my head, right? So what words am I saying to me? What questions am I asking? So I created more like being aware. And I just started doing that, like, okay, observe my hands or observe myself in the mirror, because I would not look at myself in the mirror, for some time, because I just felt like not ugly in the outside, but ugly in the inside. So I felt, pain seeing myself because I felt like a failure. Like you said, all those, imposter syndrome and a lot of those stuff is like, who am I? I'm trying to correct my daughter, but who am I? Right? I'm trying to do this. Who am I? So then I just started being more loving to myself, like accepting this is the Brenda with this hair, with this nose, with this hand, not just the physical, but the inside, the one that gets mad, the ones that sometimes, scream, the one that doesn't have patience, the ones that doesn't do the things right. And I started telling my kids, hey, I said, mom is not perfect. I'm working on it to get better. Yes. Right. But as much as I want to be perfect, there's no one to be perfect. There's no one on earth that have their life fixed. We always run into problems, right? Problems are part of life. So I started accepting that problems are part of life. You can't run away, right? Because we learn in the neuroencoding is like running away emotions. And that's what I basically had. I was running away because I did not want to think. My brain was like, it's too much. I can't take the pain. I can't think. Right. So, and then I heard this, like, if they'll pay you to think, you might not want to get the job because that's the hardest thing to do. Think. Yeah. And it is true. Think. I'm like, what am I going to eat today? Especially if you don't like to cook. That's painful, right? Think, oh, what am I going to cook?
Yeah.
So it's just basically getting to know you in a little deeper level. What do you want? Maybe that will be start asking, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you said about, thinking is hard. And that's why a lot of times we just avoid it, right? We avoid the hard stuff. We're wired to, go for the pleasure and seek pain or seek pleasure and avoid pain because it's difficult and it takes brain energy. It takes, our brains use what, 20% of our daily caloric intake, and 20% of the water that we drink. That our brain is a machine. And so a lot of times it's like, if we are run down and we are stressed, some of the basic things is like sleep, exercise, eating a healthy diet, stress management, all those things, just literally so our brains can physically operate in a better way. If we think of it like a machine, like a racehorse or a car is like another analogy. It's like, we got to put the oil in, we got to put the gas in, we have to do it so it'll go. And then, so just like even from a very foundational level, getting ourselves operating better. But I love what you said about explaining to your kids that problems are part of life, and kind of like this self-compassion that you've developed for yourself, to become closer and love yourself more, accept yourself more, treat yourself like you would a friend, talk to yourself like you would a friend. We say nice things to our friends, but then somehow we are mean to ourselves. We just do it. And so kind of like picking up on that and saying, no, we're not going to be mean. We're going to be nice to ourselves, kind to ourselves. And I love what you said, like, this is me, this is my hair, this is my body, this is me, my hands, but on the inside, this is me. And so kind of like really developing that relationship with yourself, I think that would go such a long way with so many people, to really just embrace yourself. Because at the end of the day, if you don't do this work on yourself, who is,
Exactly.
people cannot do this for you. That's, kind of what makes us human, is we can only do this for ourselves. So, okay. Any last words before we wind down? I mean, we talked about a lot. I really love actually what you said about hope. I didn't bring that up, but that was one of the very first things you said was, initially when you were your daughter was having the struggles and you were looking for somebody to blame, somehow you found hope. So maybe we could tie that into kind of the last part here. How can you encourage or inspire hope for moms?
We all, I believe, most of the moms, I mean, I'm pretty sure we all want the best for our family, for our kids, right? So we have to keep ourselves hopeful that it's for the better. Everything that is coming our way is for the better, even if it is the problem. Because look at me. My daughter was the one that woke me up, literally, woke me up to that level to say, enough. I'm cutting it. I'm not going to let this go through any of, my older children. So I decided to cut it off, right? So then that's what it was like, some having some hope within me that everything is working and I'm being guided to where I am gonna go. Because at that moment I didn't know. Remember when I said I started praying, I was like, if you have something for me, show me the way. And then I surrender. I said, whatever that is coming, whether it's good or bad, is for me to embrace it and grow with it, right? Work on it. And I realized it was a process. Like, I will not be who I am if it wasn't because my daughter went through that. And I tell her, because sometimes she feels bad, right? And I tell her, you know what, honey? I said, the reason we had this whole transformation is you. So actually, you're the hero in this story because you got mama, to work on herself, to be a better version of herself. And I think, that started like relieving some pressure off her shoulder because she thought she felt guilty. Right?
Oh,
Yeah, because a lot of times, like everything I do wrong.
I bet that brought some level of kind of healing or closure for her, that, she's the reason things got so bad that they got good again, right? They grew and kind of evolved in a really positive sense. And so if you don't mind sharing, or you don't have to, how is your daughter doing now?
Well, I can tell you she has no suicidal thoughts anymore. she's still working on some little areas because it's normal, right? And she created this acrylic nail, business doing her own. So I'm like, man, girl, you're a business girl. And all that was, underneath that little child, that little, hurtful, that she was hurt, right? So when she started healing, her true nature started coming off. Like, she's very creative, and I'm super proud of her. I tell her, like, oh my goodness, like, in her name in English means star. So I say, you are my star. That's not coincidence, right?
That's the perfect, like, kind of visualization or symbol for hope in my mind. When you said that, I was like, oh, she brought the hope back to your family as the star kind of in the family. And Brenda, how can people find you if they want to reach out to you? Where can we send them?
Social media, Brenda Melendez Coaching, or also on my cell phone, 832-818-0947. I live in Houston, Texas, Central Time. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Brenda, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for opening up, being so vulnerable as you always are. And I really believe that this message that you gave today and shared is going to impact definitely one person, but hopefully many, many more. Thank you for listening to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast, because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends.